And I remain very grateful to all of you for the way that you've looked after our men and women in uniform and their families, especially since 9/11. We've been engaged in some tough efforts. We have troopers who have now gone back in their 4th full-year tour. In some cases, I was just in Afghanistan last week, asked for a show of hands of how many at a particular combat outpost had more than 36 months in Iraq and in Afghanistan since 9/11, and quite a number of them raised their hands. They do that, by the way, for a variety of reasons, and prominent among those reasons is their sense that what they are doing is appreciated by their fellow citizens, and I appreciate that very much, more than you can ever know. You know, I mentioned I should talk about my personal connection with your university, because some 20 years ago or so, I basically had my life saved here. We were out on a range. I was a young battalion commander at that time in the great 101st Airborne Division. We were out on a big aggressive live fire exercise. One of our great troopers knocked out a bunker with a grenade. He went in, came spinning around, and he tripped very hard, fell, literally knocked himself out for a moment. As he did, we think he squeezed off a round, and that round happened to go through my chest. And thankfully I wasn't wearing a flak vest at that time, because the round went through and pretty clean and made a little bit bigger hole in the back, but it kept on going. And you know, I've told over the years that it took enormous skill and instant reflexes to dive in front of my boss to take the round for him, but nobody quite bought that. But I was standing next to General Keane at the time, that is a fact. And there's a little bit of mythology that's built up over the years, you know, something about me piloting my own medevac aircraft down to Vanderbilt. I was, you know, tell them steer left, steer right, but no, actually I was just trying to stay alive. But I mean, they medevaced me to the post hospital there. They put a chest tube in me without anesthesia, or any kind of pain, which is an interesting experience. It's the only time I've ever had a doctor say, "This is going to really hurt," and he was right. And you know, it's also not true. I didn't actually perform the surgery myself either. In fact, it was done by, as some of you may know, by Dr. Bill Frist. At that time, he was still just a thoracic surgeon, highly successful, leading thoracic surgeon in the United States. And thankfully, he was in the area. They called him in. It was a Saturday. He came in and started. You know, civilian doctors want to talk to you. I don't know what this is all about. In the military, you know, you sort of put your hands in the experts and you say, "Let's get on with it." So anyway, I'm laying flat on my back, and I'm not breathing all that well because I got a hole in my lung. And he's asking, you know, "Well, do you have any questions about the procedure?" I said, "Heck no, let's get on with it." He said, "Well, you know, are you sure you don't have any questions?" By the way, this is after I'd had to give him my insurance information or something. By the way, I also had camouflage on. You know, there's those days we used to wear this green and black camouflage, and people kept going by me, and you know, I think they thought they could get the paddles out real quick. This guy's, he's going down for the count. But anyway, so I'm on my back. They're about to wheel me in. He said finally, "Well, you sure you don't have any questions?" And I said, "Well, okay, where did you go to college, doctor?" And he said, "Princeton." I said, "Super." And I say, "How about medical school?" He said, "Harvard." I said, "Let's go." Anyway, so we did that. And now what is true, though, is, you know, I got a little bit impatient at the pace that they were allowing me to recover. So there was a moment when I figured I'd try to show them that I was ready to be checked out of the hospital. This is actually when I was back up at Fort Campbell. And so I pulled a couple tubes out and did 50 push-ups. Now, by the way, I want you to know, it's the only time in my life I've ever stopped at 50 push-ups, and it's only because the doctor made me. Anyway, actually, I had some wonderful troopers in those days, and this is what they gave me afterwards. This is the top of a box of MREs. They cut it out. You don't get a Purple Heart, actually, for getting shot by your own troops, unfortunately. But they put one on here. As you can see, here's a little Purple Heart. It's got a dummy cord on it because we used to tie everything down in those days. It's a little bit of a fetish of ours. And in fact, even the trooper himself wrote something right here. We had the chaplain bring him down here to Vanderbilt Medical Center and told him he needed to shoot a little straighter next time or something. But we sent him to Ranger School nonetheless. He's a great trooper. But so we got a big connection. I guess the most important people in all that really are the ones that I'll show on this particular slide here. Some of you have seen this before, but this is what it was really all about. And this is why it is such a privilege to do what those of us in uniform do, and why when you are lieutenants, you'll have the most awesome responsibility that anybody can imagine. It's about these individuals right here. Some of you have seen this again. This is what 1,215 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines re-enlisting looks like. This is a ceremony on the 4th of July, 2008. It was in Baghdad. This is in combat. And the great Sergeant Major Marvin Hill and I, again, former 101st Command Sergeant Major, had been with me. He's now on third tour together. We sat down a few months prior to the 4th of July and we said, hey, you know, wouldn't it be great to have a couple hundred folks maybe gather around and do a reenlistment ceremony again? Because you'll recall the first year we were there, we were in the 101st. We wanted to have 101 people reenlist. We ended up with about 150. The first year we were there together when I was a commander and he was the command sergeant major of all the forces in Iraq, we had a few hundred people. So we just wanted to do that again. It was a neat thing to do. And it was relatively, it wasn't too logistically challenging. So we put the word out and we said, okay, hey, we'll do this. Tried to give a little inducement, you know, said if you come, you get a photo with a commander and sergeant major, you get a coin, you know, you can, whatever, come on, you know, whatever it takes if you're desperate. So anyway, we did this. And he came to me a few weeks before the 4th of July and he said, hey, sir, I'm getting a little worried. I said, well, what do you mean? Aren't enough guys signing up? He said, no, actually there's about 700 or 800 and it's growing every day. I said, whoa, that's, I mean, you know, this, you can have too much of a good thing. When you're in combat, you've got to move all these people in. This became a combat operation. We got to house them for the night. We have to have their reenlistment counselors with them. I have to sign every reenlistment. I don't use an iron pen or one of those deals that signs for you. So, you know, this is 1,215 signatures in addition to 1,215 photos and coins and all, you know, okay. So what a privilege. It's going to be awesome. And it was incredible. Now, the deal here is that all of these individuals had been in Iraq, just about all of them before. Again, they're mostly a lot of mid-grade. And so you had individuals in here who had perhaps 3 years in combat in some cases. Certainly all of them had at least a year. They knew what they were doing when they raised their right hand. They were re-enlisting in combat knowing that they would be asked to return to deploy again after this tour was up, and yet they still did it. And I think they did it because, as I mentioned, they felt as if they were serving something larger than self, performing a mission that matters to our country and to our fellow citizens, and because they love doing it with those who are on their right and left, their fellow men and women in uniform. There's nothing more special than these folks right here. And really, I'm here today to talk about what they have done. And it's always a pleasure to explain the great tasks that they have taken on and the results that they have achieved. And so let me end just by saying what I said right up front. And that is that I'm also here to say thanks to a community that takes care of these individuals and their families as well as any community in our great United States, and probably better than any other, but I don't want to get in trouble with Fayetteville, North Carolina, or some other places, or Killeen, Texas. And we are very, very grateful to you. That's one reason that I'm here today. And so let me just say in turn that we appreciate very, very much what you have done for our men and women in uniform and for their families, and I thank you for that. It's a privilege to talk about it.
God bless you. Thank you.
Pleasure. I better go say hi to Marshall.
Yeah.